Hi, I'm Andy Jones, content editor for Plaid's online education program, Let's Paint. In today's Skill Builder, we're talking about all things green. Kermit the Frog said, "It's not easy being green. It seems you blend in with so many other ordinary things." It isn't easy being green, but it's great to be green. Green is a secondary color. We generally start out with three primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. And we're going to talk about all things green today. So I have yellow and blue out. But what yellow and what blue? It depends on what green you want to make. And you're wondering, I don't know what green I want to make. So I'm going to show you how to take Folk Art's yellow medium, lemon yellow, ultramarine blue, and Persian blue and make a variety of greens, and then I'm going to show you how to tone those greens. We're going to do some color theory here, and when most people hear color theory, what they really want to know is what paints to use to paint any given design with. But I want to show you how you can learn how to mix colors so that you can make any green that you need, and you are in control of the colors that you paint with. So we're putting out yellow medium and lemon yellow on the palette. So you can see already that we have two very different colors of yellow. And each will make a different kind of green. I'm putting out some, this is ultramarine blue. There we go. It's nice thick paint. And this is what you normally think of when you think of a bright blue. And then I have Persian blue here, which is a different, very intense kind of greenish blue color. Our yellows are toned or tinted, so they already have some white in them. Our blues are more pure color, and ultramarine is more opaque than Persian blue. So let's start with a little medium yellow. And one thing you're going to notice that I'm going to do an awful lot is clean my palette knife off. Every time you pick up paint, you don't want to have a dirty palette knife. You always want to have a clean palette knife. So we're going to mix a little bit of blue into some yellow, and I'm mixing ultramarine blue in with medium yellow. And you can see that we get a nice green color. There's nothing special about this green. It's just a typical kind of green color, mid to light value. And you can change this color if you want to simply by adding some more blue to it. It's going to give me a darker green, and it's going to make my green color more blue or cooler. Colors that tend to have a more blue undertone to them are considered cool colors, and if it has a more red or orange undertone, they're considered warm colors. You have to keep in mind, though, that all depends on what color this is next to. If I put this next to an even bluer green color, this will seem cooler. This will seem warmer next to a cooler green. So everything has to be in relation to what it is next to. I also want to point out a couple of other things here. Your eye can't judge this color unless another color is immediately next to it. So if I want to see how this color looks with ultramarine blue, I can't do it this far apart. The colors have to be next to each other. Your eye can't judge color from a distance, which is why when ladies are out shopping and they're looking for a navy blue blouse to match their navy blue skirt, they always have to bring those two garments together to see that the navy blues match, because your eye can't tell across the store if it's the same shade of blue. All right, so we've mixed one green color already. So let's take our lemon yellow, and I'm going to move a little bit of that over here on my palette, clean my palette knife off, and I'm going to add some ultramarine blue to the lemon yellow. and mix this thoroughly. And you see I get a different shade of green because I have a different yellow and blue combination. How different is this green? Well, as I mentioned, you can't tell from a distance, so we would need to move this green right next to, and you can see the difference now in these two colors of green. And we haven't even gotten to the exciting stuff about green yet. So I'm going to mix another shade of green, starting out with some medium yellow, again wiping that palette knife off, and this time I'm going to add in some Persian blue. And because this blue is transparent, you can instantly see that I'm getting a much different color green than I got with the ultramarine blue. So again, can't judge color from a distance, so I'm just going to add some of this green right there, and you can see ultramarine blue and medium yellow gave me this color, Persian blue and medium yellow gave me this color. So now I've mixed 3 different shades of green already, and this is why the study of color is absolutely fascinating, because every time you mix a different green color from a different yellow and different blue, it's something totally exciting. All right, so now we have lemon yellow, and I'm going to add a little Persian blue to this. And again, you're going to need to mix this well. And because I started off with a lighter yellow, I'm going to get a lighter green color. And this again is a totally different shade of green. So now we have 4 different greens that I've mixed from 2 yellows and 2 blues. These are all at what we would call maximum intensity. And what is intensity? Intensity is another word for chroma, which generally means how bright or intense a color is. You can't make a color brighter or more intense than it is when it comes out of the bottle or a tube or whatever kind of paint you're using. When you put that color out, that is at its maximum intensity. I can't make yellow, lemon yellow any brighter yellow than it is when it comes out of the bottle. I can't make medium yellow any more yellow than it is when it comes out of the bottle. What I can do is I can alter the intensity of the color in a number of different ways. And this is where color science gets to be pretty interesting. So I'm just going to move this palette up and out of the way a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to bring in a clean palette, and I'm going to show you, we're going to have a downloadable template for you, which you'll be able to download in the link in the area below, the section below. We'll have a link for this. And this is just a worksheet so that you can keep track of the intensities of your colors that you're going to mix. So there are 4 different ways to alter the intensity of a color. I can add white, I can add gray, I can add black, or I can add a complementary color. So let's just start off by mixing. We'll just mix a nice, what we'll just call a generic green color, and then I'm going to show you how we can change that green to suit our needs when we're actually painting. So I'm going to make my green from medium yellow and some Persian blue. So I just think that'll give me a beautiful green color. All right, so I'm going to mix some Persian blue into my medium yellow. And I am mixing this using a metal blade palette knife. You will want to invest in a good quality palette knife if you're going to be mixing colors. You're not going to enjoy mixing colors with a disposable craft palette knife. It's going to get in the way. So I'm just going to add a little bit more because I want this color to be a more medium value. Now, that's another term that we use when we talk about color. So we've talked about intensity or chroma, and now I'm talking about value. So to recap, intensity or chroma is how bright a color is. Value is how light or how dark a color is. So I could have a high intensity dark green. I could have a low intensity light green. Intensity and value are separate color characteristics. All right, so I'm going to take this and use this as my starting green color. That green is a very Kermit the Frog green. So I'm going to put some of that green color over here in what I'm calling my base color. So for this particular exercise, this shade of green that I mixed is where I'm starting. Now, you could pick up any folk art acrylic green that you want and start in that area on your, well, that didn't show up. Let me do that on camera for you. You could take any green and put in this square, and that will be your starting green color. You could, if you wanted to use Thicket, that's a very dark, dull green, not the one I would start with, but you can use any green color as your base color for this experiment. So we are going to do a couple of different things. I'm going to put some titanium white on my palette, and I'm going to change the intensity of this bright green by adding white to it. So I'm going to, I don't want to mix this whole puddle of paint because I need that for different exercises today. So I'm moving some paint here, and I just keep cleaning my palette knife off, and I'm going to add some titanium white to this. This will do two things to this green, and I'm going to keep using these fancy art terms for you, talking about the intensity of the color. All right, so what I have done here, I've done two things. I have lowered the intensity of the color. This green is not as intense as that green is. So I've lowered the intensity, or I've lowered the chroma of the green. I've also raised the value of the green. I've lightened that color up. So cleaning off my palette knife, I'm going to push some of this green aside, and again, always cleaning the palette knife off, I'm going to add titanium white to this portion of my green, and it's going to do two things. In fact, it's going to do the exact same two things. I have lowered the intensity of the green, and I have raised the value of the green. Clean the palette knife off, and I'm going to move some of this aside. And I'm titanium white to this portion of my green, and it's going to do the same two things again. It is lowering the intensity, making the color a less intense green, and it is also raising the value, making it a lighter green. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'm going to push some of that green to the side, and I'm going to add some titanium white to it. Again, the same two things are happening. I am lowering the intensity, and I am increasing the value. So when you look at any given shade of green, you can determine for yourself what you want to do. Do you want to lower the intensity and raise the value? You can do this, and you change from this very intense Kermit the Frog kind of green to a lighter green to what I would call like an after dinner mint green. So once you've done this exercise in raising the value and lowering the intensity, you can take your brush and come back and paint in the squares so that you know what you've done and you've created a color reference. So adding white incrementally is going to lower the intensity of the green, and it's going to raise the value. So you can continue to do this until you have virtually pure white. I'm going to need to do another one. So just quickly here, brush mix a quick one. And that is almost pure white, but you can clearly see that with each addition of white, the value gets lighter, and this is almost not even green anymore. It's such a low intensity green. Another way to lower the intensity and change what kind of green colors you get is to add a gray. And I am just using classic French gray, which is a folk art acrylic color. It's a medium gray. It's a neutral value. It doesn't lean to the reds or it doesn't lean toward the blues. And I'm going to show you how this alters the color green. So we started out with our same green color, and by adding gray to this, we're going to alter this green color in a different way than we did with the white, because this is not only going to make the color duller, it's also going to change the color of green. So as you can see, that this color is wildly different than the first time we altered it with white. So again, changing the value, lowering the intensity. I'm going to add another measure of the gray, and I'm going to try to move a little bit quickly so that you can understand a little bit more as we move on through different colors. But I'm adding more gray. And this, you will soon see why when you go to pick out gray at the paint store, there are 101 shades of gray out there. They're not just 50 shades of gray, but lots of grays. And you'll see that some of the grays will have like a violet cast to them, some will have a blue cast, some will have a green cast to them. So all different colors of green until we have almost the color that we started adding is our final color. And so on your chart, we're going to get a whole different range of green colors. And you can download and print out as many of these sheets as you want to, and it's a great thing to do so that you can learn to see all of the different shades of green. Some of these greens you will never ever want to paint with, and others you'll look at and go, oh, that would be such a great color to use in a painting. Like these colors of greens here would be great to use in a painting along with red apples, just because these are dull greens and it'll let that red really pop. Okay, so moving some things aside, a little bit of room, I'm going to move my green onto a new palette so that I've got room to work. Just move that off camera and bring this down closer to me. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add black to our green. And this is going to not only change the intensity, it's also going to change the value drastically. So this is Folk Art Pure Black. It is a neutral black color. It's not going to lean to the blues or to the reds. All right, so I'm going to take a portion of my green, set it aside, and you have to pay attention to what you're doing because you always want to keep your palette knife clean, your palette clean, and your colors in order. So I'm going to add a very small amount of black to this green, and this is going to give us what is called a shade. When we add white to a color, we get a tint. When we add black to a color, we get a shade. So again, these are technical colors that we use when we talk about color. And you always have to use the right vocabulary so that you know exactly what you're talking about. And if you're describing something to someone, instead of saying, oh, it's a bright green, you could say it's a light value intense green. So that's more descriptive for someone. All right, so moving some of this aside, I've just left myself a tiny dab there. As you move through this exercise, you'll get a feel for how much paint you need to save for each color swatch. But this is getting to be a very, very dark, dull green. If you move some of this out, you can see it's not completely black yet. There is still a little room to work. So we're going to take some of this green aside and add a tiny bit of black. And that's going to be almost more black than green. But we'll come back to our chart, and you can see where we have a different look here. We've got a different green. Each one of these greens the first alteration of green is different because of the method that we're using to change the green. So I'm just taking the time to paint this onto my chart, and if I were doing this exercise, I would make sure that I had a binder that I could put all of my swatches in so that I can go back and look at what I've done and see that I have all of my swatches neat and orderly. So if I need to go back and refer to something, I can do that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a complementary color to our green. So the complement of green on a traditional color wheel of red, yellow, and blue as the primary colors is red as it sits opposite the color wheel, and Naphthol Crimson is a great, nice, medium value red. So I'm going to take some green, and to my green, I'm going to add the complement red. And when you're doing this as an exercise, I would recommend trying to start, if you've got a medium green, start with a medium red. If you've got a really light green, see if you can find a light red to use. And I added a little too much red right off the bat, so I'm going to come back and add a little green. And this is not science, this is art. So you're going to mix the color as you need to. You can see that this is a little ruddy green color, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to take a chunk of that, move it to the side, and wipe my palette knife off, and add a little bit of red to this. Mix it in thoroughly. And you could see that we've now shifted from something that's primarily a green color. It's now definitely lowered in intensity, and we're actually shifting the color, adding a little bit more red each time. This is an excellent exercise if you want to really understand what the paint in your assortment can do for you. So I'm just going to add a little bit more red and mix this. And you can see that we've really moved far away from the green that we started with, and now we have a little bit of a dull red color. So once again, I'm going to just apply these colors to my worksheet. And these are your dull, dirty greens, almost like camouflage colors. But this exercise really does show you what you're capable of making from just a few colors. I'm going to add a little bit more red and finish out my chart. And then I want to show you something. Let me move this one palette out of the way. And this was the green that we made today, and I've added white to lower the intensity and raise the value. And you can see where we've added gray, which has lowered the intensity but kept the value just about the same. Here we've added black, and you can see where we've changed the value dramatically as well as lowered the intensity. And you can see where we've added the complement, which is red, and we've lowered the intensity of the green. We've also changed the color, which is the hue, as well as the value. So all three aspects of color have been changed by adding its complement. Here is a chart that I did previously using a different starting color. And you can see where adding the white gives me different colors, adding gray gives me a different color, adding black gives me a different color, and adding a complement, which in this case again was red, gives me yet a different sort of color. So two different charts starting out with two different greens, and now I have a huge array of colors, all made from yellow, blue, red, black, white, and gray. So just a few basic colors and you get an entire range of colors. So we'll be back doing the same sort of exercise with all the colors on the color wheel.